Hey everyone, I'm Justin Stevens. I'm back for Engage 8. We are going to go over week 14 here in just a moment. I technically started 11, wanted to get everything set up a little early this time to make sure we were good to go. I have a lot of information and I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible. So, the way I'm going to work this, as you guys are starting to fall in here. I'm going to pretty much be reading all my information as quickly as possible to try to bust it out so I can get to your questions at the end. So feel free to type in any questions you have off to the side, or even down at the bottom, and we will go through this. Um, so I'll start here in just a couple of minutes, but if you have any questions in the meantime, you can go ahead and shoot them. But see. Hopefully everybody's getting their notifications now. If you're not watching this live, then you can probably fast forward to about the 3-minute mark. It's probably when I'll really get started. Do have my Colts gear on though, representing the Engage 8 brand properly. So before I get started here real quick, Josh is not doing the live this morning because he's actually going to the Chiefs game, surprisingly. So go Chiefs. They do happen to be playing at New England, where he is a fan of the Patriots. But so I'm sure he'll be rooting for the Patriots. But I hope he has a great time. Enjoy the game with your buddy. Thanks for the opportunity to let me step in and fill in. And let's get going. So real quick, going over the injuries. Greg Olsen is out for the Panthers, and that's going to bode well for Ian Thomas. We also have Adam Thielen is doubtful, and from the way I understand, he is highly doubtful. I believe he had a setback this past week in his recovery, and seriously don't think that he's going to be playing today. That's going to affect some players. I'll go over that in just a moment. Le'Veon Bell is kind of a surprise scratch. We found out, I believe, yesterday about his illness. He's going to be out for the Jets against the Dolphins. That impacts a little bit with the fantasy outcome. The Colts, T.Y. Hilton, unfortunately, is out again, and I honestly don't see him coming back. So this is a big Colts fan here, and I hate to see it. Absolutely love T.Y. and what he brings to the table, but unfortunately, I don't see him coming back this season, and I really hope that I'm wrong about that because we need him. Vinatieri. Fortunately, Vinatieri is out. He has not played very well this season, and the Colts went out and picked up Chase McLaughlin, kind of undercutted the Patriots that were trying to get him, from what I understand. So that's even an added bonus. So Chase McLaughlin actually is not a bad kicker, though. He's only missed 4 kicks all season, so he's jumped around from team to team, too. I think this is his 3rd team just filling in for injured guys when there are plenty of teams that have bad kickers out there that could use them. So I kind of hope he plays really well and we can keep him on the hook. But Kenny Moore is also out. And now I need to apologize if you hear my dogs in the background because we live out in a small town and there's a raccoon running around my place right now. So I just found out just before the live, so I haven't had the opportunity to take care of it just yet. But I apologize ahead of time for that, but we'll roll with the punches here. Kenny Moore is out for the Colts, and typically I'm not going to bring up a lot of defensive players unless I believe that it could really greatly affect your game here. And with the Bucs passing offense between Evans and Godwin, I believe that having Kenny Moore out, the Colts are already below average in pass defense anyway, and Kenny Moore is one of their better options. So that could really bode well for Evans and Godwin. What also bodes well for Evans and Godwin is Scotty Miller being out. And he doesn't get a lot of targets or a lot of opportunity, but he does come in and fill in when they need a bit of a breather or whatnot. Certain situations, certain packages, they have him in there. So that will also bump Evans and Godwin a little bit. Seth DeValve is out for the Jags, and that's not important. I really probably shouldn't even bring it up, but I just think it's kind of funny, and I'll go over the Jaguars tight end position later on. Juju and Connor are both out for the Steelers. So the number one receiver and the number one running back are out for the Steelers. The number one quarterback is out. The number two quarterback got benched. They are still very alive in the playoff hunt, which is crazy to think. So I look forward to see what they bring to the table against Arizona. Arizona is not very good, but I'll go over that matchup in a little bit. Damian Williams is out for the Chiefs. No surprise there. Humphreys is out for the Titans, which isn't big, but Adoree Jackson is out. Again, another one of those defensive players that could greatly affect your offense when it comes to Tyrell Williams, because with the Raiders, Jacobs is highly questionable. He may not play, and if Jacobs doesn't play, they're going to want to probably lean on the passing game a little bit more, and Hunter Renfrow is still out with that rib injury. So with Tyrell being the only real good passing option outside of Darren Waller, and them not having Adoree Jackson on the other side, that could bode well for Tyrell Williams. Rams Everett is out. Again, that's actually pretty big news. I'll get to that in a minute. But the Giants have tight end issues. Ingram and Ellison are both out. So they're starting Caden Smith, who's not a bad fill-in, but still, if you own Ingram, make sure you've been monitoring that. Danny Dimes is out. We get to see Eli again. How about that? That should be interesting. Howard is questionable for the Eagles on Monday night, and I can see a situation where Miles Sanders could actually have an opportunity to do really well, maybe even go off this game, because Jabril Peppers for the Giants is also out. So I'll go over that scenario as well in just a moment. Quick rundown of what happened on Thursday night. The Cowboys and the Bears recap. The Cowboys did what the Cowboys do, and they had a lot of garbage time pickup. So you can usually tell early and often when the Cowboys are going to be down, and they were. So I take that back. You can tell early and often when they're going to lose, and they pretty much showed us early that they were going to lose this game. Gallup was still able to manage 109 yards on 6 catches and 10 targets. Guys, be ready for next season. If you're not in the playoff hunt right now and you're planning for next season, be ready to take Gallup, because hopefully the Jerry Jones will be able to get a coach that can actually coach and get somebody in there that can utilize Gallup the way he needs to be utilized. Cooper and Dak hooked up for that touchdown in the fourth quarter to help your fantasy teams out. Jarwin is another guy that you want to seek in the future. If you think about it, between Jarwin and Witten, they had 11 catches for 87 yards, and that's huge in PPR if Witten is not in the picture. So maybe Witten retires this year. Maybe he plays for another 47 years. Who knows? But eventually the guy will retire, and Jarwin is just now starting to come along, which is actually kind of early for most tight ends, since tight ends do typically take a few years to kick in. So that's just something to consider for the future. We'll go over that more in the offseason. Zeke had 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. If you follow me at all, you know that Zeke is a guy that I kind of had a strong feeling about for this week. I thought maybe he could have a big week, and he did not let me down. Also, 2 catches for 12 yards on 5 targets. So they're getting him a little bit more involved in that passing game again. I like it. Dak, again, a sloppy 300 yards passing with a touchdown and 0 interceptions. So Dak did what Dak does. It was a respectable game, one of his worst of the season, actually. So, but as far as on the field, dude, I just really hope that they can get something better in there on the sidelines, coaching and calling the plays, because that offense should be doing a lot better than they are. Trubisky. When Trubisky's going against okay defenses, and especially when he's at home, he's actually pretty good. He's streamable. He's a decent play. And he proved that again this week with 244 yards and 3 touchdowns and only 1 interception. He added 10 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. And that running floor is what you were expecting if you actually drafted Trubisky this year. And if they can start to get that back, they can start – yeah, I look better with the beard. Yeah, that's because it hides all the ugly. So thanks for that, Steve. But you still want to avoid Trubisky next week against Green Bay on the road. Again, because he's on the road and Green Bay is a somewhat decent defense against quarterbacks. So let's see. But if you're streaming, consider him in week 16 because that running floor, like I said, does help. Montgomery had 86 yards. Cohen only had 7 rushing and 24 receiving. He did add 6 catches. So if you're in a PPR league, he somewhat salvaged your day with those 6 catches if you had to start Cohen at flex. Robinson had 5 catches for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. That is huge. Robinson is way too underrated in fantasy football. He's probably way too underrated in actual football, and part of that is because he plays for the Bears. Miller had 3 catches for 42 and a touchdown. Miller's been coming on strong here lately as well. So if Miller's coming on strong and Robinson's still playing well, then obviously Trubisky isn't as horrible as we all thought. And they had a rough patch at the beginning of the season. So, I forgot. I always go over the weather before I get started with the upcoming games. And this week, the weather really isn't going to be that big of a deal. So it's like cloudy, partly cloudy, gloomy almost everywhere across the U.S. right now. But the only game that could possibly hit some rain issues is Monday night. But I don't think it's going to be enough rain in Philly to really affect that game fantasy-wise. The biggest wins that I see that could possibly be coming up would be at Buffalo. I don't think that's going to affect anything, though, because it's only like 16, 17 miles per hour expected. So don't worry about weather for this week. Typically, this is the week that we start worrying about weather, but I guess we're lucky this week. So, but be prepared for Josh's report next Sunday on weather, because if we start to hit snow, ice, and nastiness, it could be a thing. All right, so Baltimore at Buffalo. And when I say stuff like Buffalo is third against quarterbacks, it's going to vary from league to league. So it depends on your league's format, your scoring format, and that sort of stuff. So when I say third against quarterbacks, they might be fifth, they might be first, but it's somewhere around there. They're good against quarterbacks, okay? Just keep that in mind. But Jackson is matchup proof. So he has the floor, in my mind, in my opinion, this week of roughly around 18 points, because he's going to get you crazy mad rushing yards like he always does, and he's also going to get at least a passing touchdown and a couple hundred yards. So he has a really high floor. He's matchup proof. You have to start Jackson. Their weakness, though, in the Buffalo defense is against the run, and Ingram should have a big game, in my opinion. I think they're going to try to run the ball a lot. So Ingram is obviously a must start. If Jackson has such a high floor and he's matchup proof, then you got to kind of think that his best target, Andrews, is also going to be matchup proof. So I would definitely still start Andrews, but I'm also tempering my expectations. And when I say tempering expectations, it pretty much just means you're probably in a position where you have to start him unless you have some crazy good options ahead of them. But don't expect a whole lot out of them, and kind of hope that your other players can help make up that difference. Because Buffalo is second against tight ends. So hopefully they can hook up, though. Josh Allen, he has almost 36 rushing yards and 2/3 of a touchdown rushing alone per week. So he's obviously no Lamar Jackson. Okay, he's not anything like Lamar Jackson, but he's the closest that we have after Lamar Jackson. He's kind of like Lamar Jackson 2.0. So he has another decent floor with another decent ceiling. He's a solid fantasy football player. So I still like starting him if you need to, even though the Ravens have that tough defense. Singletary's been playing good. You have to start him even against that tough run defense because he gets the opportunity. You can't avoid that. Don't trust any receiving options. I don't trust any receiving options enough to say that I'm definitely starting them. And also they have Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and New England as their playoff opponents. So you've got to be aware of that receiving core against those three defenses in the playoffs. If you haven't already in Dynasty gotten rid of them, you need to consider it. Try to trade them off for some pieces that are going to help you out for next season or for the playoffs if you're still in the playoffs. I will kind of get to the start and sit questions more towards the end because I do have a lot to go over. I might even hit your questions while I'm going over all this. But I'll check that out in just a minute. Jon Snow, nice name, by the way. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking Brady, but I'm also kind of tracking through here real quick. So let's see. Carolina at Atlanta, statistically speaking, you got to start all of them. These are two really bad defenses. So your starters are CMC, Hooper, Julio, and Freeman. Kyle Allen sucks. I get that he sucks. He's not that great. Fantasy-wise, he's not that bad, though, and Atlanta really sucks as a defense. So, but Atlanta did pick him off 4 times just 3 weeks ago. I still like him to be a serviceable, startable quarterback in 2 quarterback leagues, but Christian McCaffrey should see a huge workload. He had 14 carries against Atlanta a few weeks ago and 14 carries against the Redskins last week. That's got to have something to do with Rivera's firing. I mean, you don't have a machine like Christian McCaffrey. I don't care how far down you are and not utilize him. So this the new guy Perry Fuel should utilize CMC if I had to guess, because he's trying to audition for a coaching position himself. So you're going to look for a conservative play call with CMC. I'm going to start Moore and Samuels against that 26th ranked passing or against wide receivers. Atlanta's 26th against wide receivers. So I'm going to start that touchdown upside with Moore and Samuel. Olsen's out, so you have to stream Ian Thomas. Ian Thomas had 4 catches for 24 yards on 4 targets in a very limited role against at the end of the Washington game, filling in for Olsen. Olsen's 6 targets a game proves that Kyle Allen will throw to his tight ends. Matt Ryan, I would play other options if you have another choice. I do like Calvin Ridley this week, and I'll tell you why. Historically, Carolina is bad against the number 2 wide receiver option. And Calvin Ridley has the talent to exploit that. So I look for Ridley to have a big game. Russell Gage in deep leagues, where you're desperate, he's averaging over 6 targets a game. Since Sanu left, there's just not much to show for without touchdowns, though. So you do have to understand that if he doesn't get the touchdowns, he's not doing really well. But post Sanu and in no touchdown games, he's getting less than 5 non-PPR games, but he's less than 5 points in non-PPR games and about 10 points per game in PPR leagues. So he's much less riskier in PPR. Colts in Tampa Bay, Brissett's knee is scaring me. He re-injured or tweaked it last week, and he just looked awful after he did. You could tell when he got up and he started rubbing his knee and stuff that he just wasn't right after that. And he hasn't been right most of the season because of that injury. So it's a sad thing. But the Bucs are last in the league against wide receivers, and Ty is out, so you have to start Pascal for sure. And Campbell if you're desperate for a possible flyer. But honestly, Johnson has been playing pretty well as well. So I think you're at a coin flip between Johnson and Campbell. Mack, with his cast against the second best run defense, you have to start him, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot out of him. If he's going to be holding that cast and trying to run the rock against that defense, I'm not too excited. I do think that they're going to try to save him a little bit, and they're going to try to exploit the passing game against Tampa Bay. Doyle was 6 for 73 and a touchdown last week. 11 targets without Ebron last week. He was getting 5 targets per week with Ebron, so you got to start him. He's still available in 37% of all ESPN leagues, at least as of last night he was. So you have to start him. You have to pick him up. He's going to be a better option than most tight ends out there. Hines is flexible in deep leagues because of the whole trying to exploit the Bucs pass defense. I think they're going to try to throw more and hold back on Mack just a little bit. So I kind of like Hines in a deep flex position. Winston, why not go ahead and start Favre 2.0? He has 22 touchdowns and 20 interceptions, and the last time a quarterback had stats like that and was still able to keep his starting job this late in the season was Brett Favre, the old gunslinger himself. He's going to throw the rock. And again, without Kenny Moore there and that pass defense already not being that great, it's definitely the potential for Winston to have a big game. But the Colts are pretty tough against the run, so I don't trust any of the Tampa Bay backs. And then Evans and Godwin are locks. You just got to hope that it's your guys' turn. And as much as I hate to say it, they could both have a big game this week. But avoid all Tampa Bay tight ends. I think we've already blown that up over the season as it's gone. But Miami at the Jets. These offenses are two of the top three offenses in allowing points to team defenses. But both team defenses are one of them that you typically target if you're trying to stream guys. So it should be an interesting game fantasy-wise, because if you're good at streaming and you're in the playoffs right now, then you are good at streaming. Then this is a typical type of game that you're going to look for players like this. So you just got to hope that your guy steps it up. And I'm starting Darnold, Robbie, and even Crowder if I can. With Bell out, I think it's highly unlikely that they're going to use the committee of Powell and Montgomery very much. I think they're going to try to throw the ball and exploit that bad Dolphins pass defense. So look for him to air it out. But Powell could be a decent flex if you're really desperate just because of the opportunity, but I'm not confident in that at all. I would start Griffin also if you're streaming tight ends. If you don't already have a lock, obviously, then I would start Griffin. He's actually available in 75% of leagues, and I just don't understand that at all. I mean, when you're looking for a streamable tight end, you're looking for a possible low-end tight end one with touchdown potential and getting targets. And since week 6, he's had 5 touchdowns and averaged over 4 targets per game. So, I mean, he's actually that streamable tight end that you want, and nobody's picking him up. I dropped him in a main league earlier this week to pick up another running back because my opponent was weak at running back. And then I waited all the way up until last night to drop that running back to pick up that tight end, to pick up Griffin again. And nobody picked him up all week long. I'm shocked. Like, there are guys that need tight ends in that league, and nobody wanted them. So hopefully that pays off for me, and it'll be on my bench because I have Andrews, but it is what it is. But I'll start Fitzpatrick in 2 QB leagues only. Laird could be a surprise at flex. He'll look to take almost all of the looks, so he's going to have that opportunity. Devontae Parker is a thing again, I think. I'd start him in all formats, though, because he has been playing really well. Gesicki had 0 touchdowns over 10 games. Okay, so listen to that. 0 touchdowns over 10 games and 43 targets. Then all of a sudden he gets 2 touchdowns and 14 targets over the last 2 games. Okay. I believe we will see a negative regression back to the mean here, but if desperate in 2 tight end leagues, he could be startable. But don't chase points. Never chase points in fantasy football. And 2 good games in a row do not necessarily guarantee a third, especially against the defense that's 4th in the league against tight ends. So San Francisco and New Orleans, we've got Coleman, Kittle, Kamara, and Thomas are your obvious starters. Sanders, Breeze, Cook, Jimmy G are all also startable. Debo, New Orleans is not good at all against wide receivers, but they are really bad against the slot receivers. Sanders has more than 40% of his routes have been ran from the slot. So I actually look for Sanders to have a big game here, more so than Debo. But Debo does have the touchdown potential as well. Debo has 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, but since Kittle has been back, he's also only had 4 catches in the last 2 weeks. So he's not getting that same level of opportunity. Let's see. So with Debo, his 2 most heavily involved games were the 2 games that Kittle was out. So he's getting little opportunity otherwise. So kind of down a little bit on Debo, even though I really like his touchdown potential. They're both flexible if you need them. After Coleman, I'm fading on the whole San Francisco backfield unless you're absolutely desperate. At this point, I would say maybe Breida since he's healthy and playing, and then Mostert. But if I have to rank them like that in the same backfield because it's that close, then it's probably a backfield that you don't trust. But we do know that Coleman is the guy, so he would be the guy that I would choose to start if I need one. Jimmy G, New Orleans isn't great against quarterbacks, but they have their moments. I'd still not be afraid to start him if I didn't have a better option. He is the number 14 quarterback And chances are you either got him off of free agency, you traded for him, or you got him really late in the draft, so he was a great value. So kind of one of the reasons why I was kind of big on Jimmy G start of the season, because I knew you could get him late, and you got, like I said, top 14 quarterback value out of him. Streamable, really good quarterback. Why not? All right. Breeze worries me against San Francisco. They eat quarterbacks alive, but it is Breeze. I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him, but if you must, at least he has a ton of weapons. Cook is one of those weapons. San Francisco is best in the league against tight ends, but since week 5, he's been amazing in PPR and pretty good in standard as well. So Breeze loves throwing to him. So take advantage of that if you because tight ends are not that great in fantasy, as we know. Detroit at Minnesota. You want to start Golladay and Marvin Jones. The Vikings' weakness on defense is against wide receivers, and they are two very good wide receivers. If both of the wide receivers are startable, then you would think that Blau should be as well, but I'm still looking for better options just in case. I want to see Blau a little bit more before I start to trust him, even in 2 quarterback leagues, because wide receivers can do really well, and Blau could still throw 4 picks. So we got to see what the young buck can do. Scarborough is the guy in Detroit for what that's worth. I would flex him because of the opportunity, but that's about it. Let's see. I would avoid Detroit tight ends. It wasn't that great with T.J. Hockenson, and then now it's going to be mainly Logan Thomas. Jesse James will get in there a little bit, and I don't like the thought of that. So now Thielen, this whole Thielen scenario and situation is interesting. Thielen went out during the Detroit game in Week 7. He's had a recent setback with his recovery, as I suggested earlier in the show. But if he's out again, then Rudolph actually is a must start, in my opinion. Kyle Rudolph is a must start. He's scored an average of 1 touchdown per game since Thielen went out, including the game that Thielen went out. And he's scored in all but one of the games, and he scored 2 in another. So he's averaging 5 targets per game over that period and 9 yards per catch per game. So that's absolutely amazing. He's getting the workload. So I actually like Kyle Rudolph again until Thielen comes back. Diggs is a must-start wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside. Cousins is a must-start. Detroit is bad against quarterbacks, and Cousins has been playing pretty well lately. So actually all season Cousins has been playing really well. I think I lost a side bet to my buddy Joel on that one. So let's see. Dalvin is playing. This whole situation is so frustrating for Dalvin Cook owners, because if you're a smart Dalvin Cook owner, then you probably went out and picked up Madison, knowing that Madison can be that guy if Dalvin goes down. I am that smart Dalvin Cook owner, and I did take Madison, or if I didn't take him, I at least traded to get him in every league I possibly could. And now it's still possibly going to bite me in the butt. Okay, so Dalvin Cook is playing. He's saying he's going to play. He's saying he's healthy, full participation. So do we trust that? Because that injury is actually pretty serious. If you listen to the experts that have been talking all week, that have had doctors come in on their show and talking about it, and it sounds so scary, like he could re-injure it at any moment. So with that kind of production out there on the field, I mean, if you think about it, I believe it's let me see, I got it down here. I think they're like 30th against the run. The Detroit is like 30th against the run. They're bad against the run. So you're guaranteed amazing running back points with those 2, whichever one it is. Okay. So I battled with this all week, and I came up with my conclusion. I'm going to start both in this scenario, and I'm going to hope that between the 2 of them, I get one amazing running back, and then my flex is just a flex anyway. So I'm just going to hope for the best between the 2 of them. So, and obviously that depends on who you have as your flex options, but in most cases, I can't think of a better option than if Madison were to fall into that role. So I can talk about that a little bit more in detail later if you have more questions about it, but I don't see us getting too much more deep into that. Denver at Houston is a quick one. You got Freeman, Sutton, Watson, Hyde, Hopkins are all obviously must starts. Noah Fant and Drew Lock are startable if you are in 2 tight end, 2 quarterback leagues. Fuller needs to be heavily considered in all formats. Okay, Hopkins will have Chris Harris Jr. on him, and the number 2 guy against Denver has been playing well all season. So start Fuller in your flex with a smile on your face. Cincinnati at Cleveland. Dalton looked like even more of a game manager last week than even he normally does. So he's not going to have that upside from the quarterback position that you need in playoff formats. So avoid him and Cincinnati's tight ends because they don't have any good tight ends. You have to start Mixon and Boyd, or you have to start Mixon and Boyd is flexible. This should be a big game for all the major Browns players, especially Baker Mayfield. The Bengals are in the bottom 25% of the league against quarterbacks. I'd start Landry, OBJ, and both Chubb and even Hunt in the flex. Also, if y'all have the roster space and you need a tight end, I would at least pick up David Njoku, okay? I know how that sounds. He's just now been released off of IR. He's active. He's going to play this week. David Njoku is one of the few players that has a really good chemistry already with Baker Mayfield. He had this chemistry in the offseason. So did Landry, and Landry has been a better player, a better receiver for Baker than OBJ has. That chemistry goes a long way. And in week 1, Njoku had a touchdown, and he had like 3 or 4 catches, and he was their red zone target that game. And then week 2, early, he gets hurt. So you might pick up Njoku, keep him on your bench, and wait and see what happens. And also I have this theory that bad quarterbacks need that crutch of a good tight end to help bail them out in tight spots. I'm not saying that Baker is a bad quarterback, but he's definitely proving that he's not a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback anyway. He's going to use that tight end. Washington and Green Bay. I don't trust Haskins, and I don't trust the tight end position. They already have 2 tight ends on IR. Jeremy Sprinkle is going to be asked to probably help out that O-line that seems to have been playing a little better recently to help block even more for a run-heavy game, in my opinion. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. Geis is a top 20 back, in my opinion, and AP is definitely flexible, as the Packers are in the bottom 5 against the run. I get the thought that going down early in big games could cause you to have to throw the ball more, but I kind of disagree with that in this scenario because the way that you beat Aaron Rodgers is you run the football, you run the clock, and you keep Rodgers off the field. Okay, that's how the Lions were able to do it 4 out of their last 5 times that they played Rodgers, and how they would have done it this last game if they weren't robbed by the calls. Because they were keeping Rodgers off the field. So they're going to want to run the football. They've been doing it all season ever since the interim coach stepped in and he's said he was going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're running the football. Let's see, as long as they stay within about 3 scores, that is. And I think they could do that if they keep Rodgers off the field. McLaurin at flex, if you absolutely must start him, only because Kelvin Harmon is the only other real threat, and Harmon has actually even had a couple decent games lately. So I don't know. I don't know that I trust the wide receivers in that offense very much right now at this point. But if I had to choose one, obviously it would be McLaurin. You're starting Rodgers, you're starting Adams, you're starting Aaron Jones. You're even starting Jamal Williams because he's getting plenty of opportunities in your flex. Lazard is a deep league threat if you're desperate because Rodgers does trust him and he's prevailed as the wide receiver 2 in that offense. I'm not big on Jimmy Graham because they simply don't use their tight ends. Even though it is a favorable matchup, you could do worse, though. So maybe. That's up to you. Good luck. The Chargers at Jacksonville, Hunter Henry, Keenan Allen, Eckler, Gordon, you're starting all of them. I see a run-heavy game here. Jacksonville's 27th against the run in the league. And Rivers may be streamable, but I'm not excited about it. But definitely start Eckler and Gordon if you got them. Another down week for Mike Williams, unless you want to hope that this is that week that he gets that first touchdown of the season. And if you're hoping for that in week 1 of the playoffs, then I feel really bad for you. So you're not starting Mike Williams if you can avoid it. Chark is a wide receiver 2, flex kind of at that border with high ceiling, though. So you have to start him because he does have that high ceiling. And that secondary for the Chargers, really, it's a tough secondary. So, but still, you always have that chance. Now on to those Jacksonville tight ends that I mentioned earlier. Swaim is on IR. Oliver's on IR. O'Shaughnessy is on IR. DeValve is doubtful. O'Leary is your starter. Okay. And O'Leary is typically more of a blocking tight end. Again, blocking for Leonard Fournette. I see Leonard Fournette having a huge game this week. Don't use a Jacksonville tight end. Fournette is a top 5 running back for me this week. They should lean heavily on him. Minshew is great against bad teams and flashy. He's like flashy good when he needs to be, but I'm not overly confident in him against the Chargers. Temper your expectations in 2 quarterback leagues. Okay. All right. Pittsburgh has a juicy matchup against Arizona. Start Duck Hodges in 2 quarterback leagues. Even though it's a great matchup, I still wouldn't trust him in 1 quarterback leagues just yet. He's still young and still not quite that good just yet. Juju is out, so Deontay Johnson has gotten 21 targets over the last 4 weeks, but Washington's gotten 23 targets and is actually scoring fantasy points. I'm taking Washington and starting him where I can. I would start Johnson if I have to, if I'm desperate, but I'm gladly starting Washington in my flex. Connor's out, so you can flex Snell and maybe even Samuels if you're absolutely desperate. We don't know how that backfield's going to look. They kind of change it from time to time. They put that one guy in, that Whitty or White or whatever it was, spelled weird, but a couple weeks ago, and he had a good game. So whoever the running back is should have a good game. So it's kind of a crapshoot. Vance McDonald has an amazing matchup, but he hasn't performed all season. Maybe in 2 tight end leagues, you might consider him, but I'm avoiding him. Kirk is startable. Fitz has not scored double digits in standard league since week 2. Avoid him. Okay. I love the guy. I hope he sticks around, but no, Steve, I'm not really trusting Westbrook this week. I'm not a fan for this week, just because of that secondary. And all right, so start Kyler because of the floor. Because of the floor that Kyler Murray has with his legs, I'm starting him. So you can also start or flex Drake and avoid all the other running backs in that horrible backfield. Drake is proving that he is the guy. Tennessee at Oakland. Henry may be the only obvious start for Tennessee. Jonnu Smith does have a great matchup, but if you're desperate in 2 tight end leagues only, and even then, I'm not considering. They're just not utilizing their tight end anymore. Tannehill took over in week 6, and A.J. Brown's targets have gone way up since week 6. Coincidence? No, it's not. Tannehill is a top-tier quarterback in fantasy. Yeah, believe that. Tannehill is a top-tier quarterback in fantasy since he took over as the starter in week 6. I guess he took over as a starter in week 7. He came in week 6, so I guess the stats would go from week 7. But the poor pass defense of the Raiders start Tannehill and Brown, and even flex Corey Davis in deep leagues. I would reluctantly start Tyrell because of the situation for this week. Okay, so with Adoree Jackson out, and with Hunter Renfro's rib injury, and the fact that Jacobs may not play and they're going to have to throw the ball a lot, I could kind of see me playing Tyrell Williams if I still owned him. I traded him away in most of my leagues, but I do still have him in a couple, and I'm going to have to start him because of the opportunity. So you're starting Jacobs if he plays, obviously, but if he doesn't, you're kind of avoiding that backfield in my mind, because I think that DeAndre Washington's going to be the standard guy. Rashard will be the PPR guy, but it's going to be close either way, and I just see them throwing the ball a lot more. So maybe lean more towards Rashard. Carr in 2 quarterback leagues only, but even then, don't watch the game so you can actually enjoy your playoffs. You don't want to have to watch Carr just because you had to start him. So please do yourself a favor and turn on another game. Even with 5 of Waller's last 6 games being below average games by Waller's standards, he's still a top 5 tight end, guys. He's still a good, serviceable, even sometimes wonderful tight end to have with a really high ceiling. So you have to start him. Kansas City at New England. Kelsey, Hill, McCoy, Mahomes, Brady, Edelman are all your obvious starters. There isn't much else to say about Kansas City starts, but you can still temper your expectations because New England still has a great defense. And I know a lot of people want to say that New England has a great defense because they play such a weak schedule. And while that's true, they always seem to have a really weak schedule because of that division. The opponents that they're going against are still, on average, scoring fewer fantasy points against New England than they do their other opponents. So New England still has a really good defense, guys. Don't let that schedule fool you. So you still have to temper your expectations for all your Kansas City starters for this week, but you also can't get fancy with it and tricky with it and outthink yourself. You still got to start those guys. Let's see. James White and Sony are both low-end RB2s, high-end flex starts. You don't know which one it's going to be, so you're going to start either one of them. Whichever one you own, you're going to start them and hope that they're the guy for this week. And avoid other New England pass catchers outside of Edelman. There's just nothing secure there. Let's see, Seattle at the Rams. The Rams are middle of the pack across the board on defense. Wilson and Carson are both must-starts. Carson and Penny have been almost identical in their splits in the last 2 weeks. I'm flexing Penny where I can, even though I'm starting Carson. If I own them both, I'm starting them both because they're going to run the ball with both of them. At this point, I think they're going to finish out the season that way, even if it's just to kind of help keep them both healthy for their playoff run. With Lockett, between his leg injury and the sickness, he's had a rough patch here lately, and while he's been on his skid, he's allowed Wilson to develop much more confidence in his other options. I feel that DK is now a solid flex with upside, where Lockett is a cringeworthy flex option until he breaks this funk. You still have to start him, though, because he still has that deep threat potential. He still has the touchdown potential, so you got to start him, which will hopefully be this week that he breaks that funk. Hollister came out guns a-blazing in week 9 and 10, but since the bye week, he's had a huge digression, or he has digressed tremendously. I still like him to have an okay floor this week with touchdown upside. 28 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks is perfect for a streamable tight end. And then with Everett out and Higbee in, you have to start Higbee if you can. Unless you have a top-notch, top-tier tight end for this week, you've got to start him. And here's why. If you took all of the stats that Higbee and Everett have had combined this season and put them all together into one tight end and pretend like the other one didn't exist, they would be a top 5 fantasy tight end. Because there again, I go back to Goff kind of sucks, and he's going to lean on that crutch, that tight end crutch. And they've been utilizing that tight end much more to help them move the ball. So with Everett out, I see Higbee having an opportunity to be definitely a top 10, if not a top 5 tight end this week against a horrific Seattle defense against tight ends. Let's see. Goff, again, avoid him unless it's 2 quarterback leagues. Even then, you can expect a really low ceiling. He just has not been playing well. Gurley is a must start. You most likely have to start Kupp or at least flex him at this point. But I am also flexing Robert Woods. The man has 64 catches, 835 yards, and 0 receiving touchdowns. If you want to talk about positive regression and the opportunity for it, this is it. He's due. He should get his touchdown, hopefully this week. Let's see. But Cooks even also Cooks should be looking at a possibility of a positive touchdown regression, but he's the 3rd option. You can flex him at your own risk if you want. The Giants at Philly. Eli is back. Sorry, Giants fans, but Eli is back. But honestly, Danny Dimes hasn't been playing really well either. So Eli is only 2 games, or in his only 2 games this season, had 2 touchdowns, 3 turnovers, over 550 yards against Dallas and Buffalo, who have turned out to be pretty decent defenses, especially when Dallas was healthy. He's kind of like that Toby Keith song, "I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was." We'll see. Hopefully he can make a name for himself and ride off in the sunset with a win. And Philly is not a very good team, so he could potentially do that. Their secondary is really bad. So I would still start or flex Slayton, Shepard, and Tate. And especially with Ingram and Ellison out, you kind of have to start them. So Jaden Smith is a decent flyer to pick up if you're desperate for tight ends. And also, I wrote down a little note here. And obviously, this is just tongue-in-cheek, but if the Giants win out and the Cowboys lose out, and Philly's only win from here on out is against Dallas, then the Giants would force a 3-way tiebreaker for the division. Yeah. Let's see if old Eli still has it in him. Let's see. And it is Monday night. That game is Monday night as well, so that means that he's under the lights and he's used to pressure play. Barkley is obviously a must start, even though he hasn't been playing like the Barkley that you all drafted or traded for after his injury to try to get, expecting him to come back as Barkley. So, but with Eli, who knows? Maybe he can bring a spark to that offense. Start Ertz because you have to, but I think this will be a below average week for him as well. The Giants linebackers can actually cover tight ends far better than their secondary can cover wide receivers. And Jeffrey should be a big game, or should have a big game. I even like JJ Arcega-Whiteside as a sneaky flex play as well. If Howard is in or out, I don't think it really matters so much. I'm still starting Sanders. If Howard's in, maybe I'm starting Sanders in the flex. If Howard's out, maybe I'm starting him as my RB2. But I'm still starting Sanders either way. And again, that bad secondary and without Jabril Peppers, when the Giants go to man-to-man defense, they would normally have Jabril Peppers on a running back. And that would probably be Miles Sanders in this case, and they're without Peppers. So I could possibly see him having a big game here. So now to the questions here. I know it looks like I've fallen a little behind. I tried to hit a couple of them as I went, but I wanted to get through that. Fuller is out. Okay, that's good to know. So that must have came in while I was on here. So that's interesting. So maybe Stills has a big game then. So I might start Stills at this point. Actually, I probably would because he still has that deep threat possibility. Thanks for that update, Steve. If there's anything else I've missed while I was reading through my notes to you guys, please pop them down here. Let's see. Hooper or Doyle, PPR. Harrison Davidson. Well, Harrison, I'm gonna have to go with Doyle. Like I said, he had 11 receptions last week. Hooper's coming off of his injury. That offense can be very sporadic. One thing that's constant with the Colts, whether they're good or bad, is that the tight end gets targets and opportunity. And Doyle's also the red zone target as well. And I know Hooper is also, but I think it's a tough one. I think you have a tough decision there, but I think just because of the injury and Matt Ryan not playing to the best of his potential right now, I would have to say Doyle. And that's going to sound like it's a homer pick because I'm wearing all my Colts gear. But listen, I'm also the guy that just said that the Colts are going to have a really rough game against Tampa Bay. And to be honest with you, I don't see the Colts having a shot at winning this game. Oh, yep. Just got the update from draft.com that Fuller is out. So now I need to change some of my lineups on draft.com. But let's see. So Kyler Murray or Brady? Back to that one, Jon Snow. I apologize. I didn't really give you enough time or effort on that one. Honestly, now that I think about it a little bit more, I think that Brady and that New England offense is probably going to want to run the ball a lot more. Kyler Murray does have that floor with his legs. Again, that's a tough decision. That's a close one. But Kyler's been playing a lot better than Brady on average, and Brady really doesn't have the receiving options. I think I might actually go Kyler, to be honest with you. So I hope you didn't sign off after I mentioned Brady real quickly just to try to help give you an answer. But the more I think about it, I would probably go Kyler. So yeah, start Kyler over Brady. But it's going to be close either way, and I think you're going to be okay. I think you're going to get a medium to low end QB1 out of either one of them. Steve, do I start Jared Allen over Cousins? Let's see. Let me look at something real quick. A lot of times these are just way too close for me to just decide right on the spot. So I kind of want to look at a few things. But Jared Allen over Cousins. Honestly, no. I think you got to go Cousins here. I just Where's it at? Yeah, this is horrible live video. but um, but yeah, honestly, I think that Detroit has a bad enough defense that you pretty much have to start Cousins over most startable guys. They both have a really high floor, and I think that Cousins just might have that higher ceiling. So I think I would go with Cousins there. Hunt or Jacobs, full PPR. You got to go Jacobs, Harris Davison. You got to go with Jacobs if he's playing. I know he's going to be playing hurt, and they're probably going to lean on the pass, but he's just going to get way more opportunity in that offense if he's playing. Obviously, if he's not playing, you're starting Hunt over either of those other two options in Oakland, over Washington and Richard. I would definitely start Hunt over both of them if Jacobs is a no-go. Let's see. You need one. Okay, John Snow, you need one wide receiver and one flex. You have Shark, Pascal, OBJ, Laird, and Breida. Oh, wow. Okay. So one wide receiver right out the gate. We'll get that out of the way. I'm going to go with Pascal. Again, that Tampa Bay pass defense is horrible. Pascal's going to be the number one. Pascal, if you look at his stats, you think that he's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. You think that he's going to do really well or he's going to do really bad. But really, it's when he's boosted into a prominent role, he does really well. And when it's time for him to take a back seat and be a good little backup and a good little teammate, he does his job and he backs up. He'll block on bubble screens or whatever. He does his job and he does it well. So I think I'm going to go with Pascal as your obvious start here. And then on the flex end, I think I'm going to lean towards Chark. That's a tough one. I'm not going Breida in this situation. Laird's going to get a lot more opportunity against a weak defense. And OBJ is due for another big game, but when is it going to come? We don't know. So yeah, so that's my answer. Personally, I'm going with Pascal and Chark as your wide receiver and your flex. Let's see. Steve said, should I start both Seahawks running backs? I think I did mention that I would, and then you say not both. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. So let me know if I didn't answer that properly, but I would probably go with both. Westbrook, yeah, no, I'm not against that secondary, and not with Minshew back there. He's going to be great for fantasy. He's going to run around. He's going to provide play action for them that Foles wasn't able to do. But yeah, I just see a huge game from Fournette, and because of that, they're not going to throw it a whole heck of a lot. And I'm only going to choose one wide receiver out of that offense if that's the situation. Let's see. I'm going to check Twitter real quick and see if we have any questions on there. Okay, yeah, Madison already kind of hit that. Yeah, so it looks like that's all the questions for now, and we've already hit 53 minutes. I've rambled on for longer than I expected that I would. So if you guys have any other questions, any other start-sit questions, feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I'm going to sign off here in just a couple of minutes. But I appreciate the participation, guys. This means a lot. If you like what you saw, please hit that thumbs up down at the bottom. Please subscribe to us to help boost our numbers and see if we can't get something going here. With this, we certainly have a lot of fun doing it. I'm still going to continue to do it, even if the numbers don't go up, because at the end of the day, I'm doing it for me because I have a lot of fun with it, and it has greatly helped my own personal fantasy leagues. Being able to do this much research for you guys, trying to do the research for you guys has helped me out a ton as well. So I believe that's it. So week 14, playoffs, guys. Enjoy it. Have fun with today. It all comes down to this. This is what it's all about. Sam, if you're watching this, let me know if I'm meeting up with you for Sunday night or Monday night football so we can watch the game at your place. And I know you heard that too, Steve. So I'm signing out, guys.